Let's Get To presents Go Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
And welcome back to Go Astros. And I'll be honest, audience out there and co-host Andy and Brian, I didn't get to watch any of the last 10-ish games, but apparently, according to Astros Twitter, we lost all of them.
Well, we went 500, roughly.
So basically,
I know in the last week we went 3-4, which isn't great considering we were playing two teams that we should have not gone 3 or 4 against. But as I'm sure we'll get into, this is a very tired Astros team. There's a very real reason that August is called the dog days of summer, and August baseball is just the worst. Especially if you have a large lead in your division. And they are very much going through the motions right now. Should they be is a different question, but that's what it feels like watching these games.
Now, Brian, but according to what the vibe I got from Astros Twitter is that they lost that lead and that they're not going to make the playoffs now because of the series. Is that accurate?
yes, I believe I believe the way it works is whatever happened in your last game, that's when it's going to happen forever, and nothing ever changes. And so to be fair, I did look at like Facebook, and one of my Yankee fan friends was, railing on Brian Cashman for having acquired Frankie Montas. So this is not a disease unique to Astros fans. Everyone sort of overreacts to one thing. Again, I write about sort of the season divided into 6. The Astros have had a winning record every single 6 of this season. And I suspect by the time we get to the end of the 5th, 6th, 25 games from now, they'll do fine.
It does feel like, though. I mean, I know that it's every fan base, and it's funny because getting to hang out with Andy, we hung out with Emily Nyman this weekend, and it was fun to sort of talk to her. Not part of her Twitter persona, because she's also kind of a very stressed out, nervous Yankee fan, despite the way she presents herself, but it just feels like we have a lot of fans who are really vocal, who clearly don't understand baseball.
Well, yeah, we're a remarkably, for our 5 listeners, I'm sorry that you're going to be mad at me, but we're a remarkably immature baseball fan group. And that's not really our fault. We have a 65-year history of baseball in Houston, and you're talking about comparing it to a Yankees fan base or a Dodgers fan base that spans back to the 1800s, 1901 for the Yankees, the Highlanders, you can get all of that. This is not that show, but you've got generational history and parents, fathers and mothers who have taught their children to adore and love the teams that they root for now. Houston is, and it's one of the things that I've noticed, Houston is just now getting to the point where people say, I'm from Houston, and it's a real thing. They were actually born here. Because all of us are of the age where there was such migration from the north when we were growing up that, where are you from? Philadelphia? Where are you from? St. Louis? Where are you from?
Yeah.
Detroit? And when you have these teams come in, the Astrodome was half Cardinals fans. The Astrodome was half Cubs fans, because that's who those people grew up rooting for. We're finally getting to the point after 60 years of, my father took me to Astros games and his father took him to Astros games, and that makes sense mathematically. It doesn't explain why we're all big babies. Twitter helps that. You look at this last 10 games. We're 5-5. The Yankees are 4-6. Seattle's 5-5. Those are the 3 teams I'm paying attention to right now, because those are really the only things that are affecting me. Nobody's doing well. The only team that's not crying when they win seems to be the Mariners. The Yankees are in full-on cry mode all the time right now.
Yeah.
It's bad from the few Yankees fans that I follow. Astros fans are, whatever happened in the last game, to Brian's point, is what's happening. We win 6-1. The World Series is ours. Why even play it? We lose 1-0 in a really well played baseball game. By the way, it was frustrating, but it's a 1-0 baseball game where pitching ruled. We just happened to be on the wrong side of that one run. Oh my God, we're never going to score a run again. Dusty Baker probably has died, and they haven't told us yet. That's why he's not in the dugout. And Kyle Tucker's got permanent bubble gut, so he's never playing again. It's just everything that could go wrong. Yordan Alvarez probably is going to be had his hand amputated. I saw that. Just everything that could possibly go wrong is going to go wrong. but we're going to keep watching, by gum. And that's the mature level that we've reached. We're going to keep watching.
Yeah, Brian.
We would have just turned it off 10 years ago because the Texans were going to start practice.
Brian, did you have permanent bubble guts on your bingo card this morning? Because I didn't. So
No, but I obviously should have. That's a mistake on my part. So, yeah, I mean, good baseball teams lose 60 games. In fact, this team is on pace not to lose 60 games. They're on pace to lose 59 and win 103. Really good season, right? Again, I don't know if they'll sort of match that pace, in part because, they're not going to be as intense over the last 2 months because they have a huge lead in the division.
Sure.
And because they have a huge lead over the Twins for the number 3 seed. And the chances they lose either one of those it's not 0, but imagine a number as close to 0 as possible. That's basically what it is. And, if they go 500 the rest of the season, they end up with 96 wins, which is A, a really good season, and B, one win better than last season, and going to both win the AL West and get a bye to the second round. And so, hey, if they lose tonight to the Rangers and get one hit against Martin Perez, curse like crazy and have an extra beverage. You do that. But before you go to bed tonight, say, you know what? This is a good baseball team. They're more likely to win than lose tomorrow. Take a deep breath. Let it go.
We'll start with Andy on this actual question now that we've berated our own fan base for the first.
Thanks
10
for listening,
minutes.
everybody.
Thanks for the first 10 minutes of the show. Andy, by the way, we have many more than 5 listeners. In fact, you're on the number 150 ranked baseball show in Great Britain. So I don't know what you're talking about, but I actually read a really good article by Brian T. Smith, and I know he's very hit or miss, but he really talked about the Trey Mancini issue and Trey Mancini seems like the best guy. Like, he seems like he's down here. He's just excited to be here of where to play him. Do you feel like he needs to be the guy that's in the lineup every day, regardless, and just finding a different spot for him?
At this point, yes. So a couple of things. I understand why Dusty, as crusty as Dusty is, I understand why Christian Vasquez and Trey Mancini weren't in the starting lineup the day they were acquired, because those guys, emotional high and emotional low, talking up each of those guys, weren't probably in the headspace to go play a baseball game.
Yeah.
And then Dusty makes the statement, which I have picked on a number of times. Well, I don't know those guys. I know my guys. It sounds idiotic to us, but what Dusty's basically saying is, I'm a player's manager. These are my players that I've had all season so far. I'll work these other guys in, but right now I want to focus on the emotions of my guys, because they're probably worried about their jobs, their playing time. Because when you pick up Trey Mancini, who's not playing now? Brantley's probably not coming back, or if he is, it's going to be at the very end of the season. So Aledmus Diaz is probably playing less. Yuli Gurriel is probably playing less. There's a number of situations where guys' playing time could be affected. Martin Maldonado is the same way. When you get a catcher who is arguably as good and younger and can hit better, there's going to be a lot of calls for him to play. Trey Mancini brings golden retriever energy, though, to the team, which is fantastic. He is happy to be there. He is happy to be in a pennant race. He hasn't really been in a pennant race in his career. And so you've got guys like Bregman, like Altuve, who have been through these wars. And August is never a great month for Jose Altuve statistically, because it is all of the beatings you've taken up until that point kind of wear in. And there's not a whole lot of, we've got to win today or else, until really September. And I don't even know if that kicks in for them. So Trey Mancini playing every day is not just about getting a bat in the lineup. It's about bringing some energy, about guys that are really hungry and excited to be there. And I'm not criticizing the Astros lineup as it is, but Yuli Gurriel will play better with rest. Aledmus Diaz was hot for a couple of weeks. He started to cool off this week. Having another bat is only beneficial to us. Michael Brantley realistically probably isn't coming back this season. This is a replacement for that. Mancini is not a 330 hitter, but Michael Brantley's not a 330 anymore either. But it's another piece, and it's good flexibility. I want to see Mancini in the lineup as much as it possibly makes sense. Does that mean 7 out of 7 days? Probably not. But does that mean 5 out of 7 days? Yeah. Because he's better than the alternative.
Brian, I'm going to bring up something to you because you are that pivots off of what Andy said, because you definitely are numbers guy. But I do think that there's something that Andy that I really agree with, where when you have a group of guys that have become business-like, this all becomes a little bit every day. It's maybe nice to get that shot of energy of like, hey guys, let's remember. It's almost like Rube in the end of Major League 2. You're in the gall darn major leagues, boys. You there's your Major League 2 reference for the week. But yeah, I mean, I think he hits on something that I didn't even really think about. Having that energy has got to be great to keep maybe a sense of urgency in the clubhouse.
Yeah, and Mancini just seems like an optimist, and I assume he's just kind of born that way. And beating cancer probably doesn't hurt on that, but it is, hey, I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to be here, and it sounds like he's a good guy to have in the clubhouse because he probably likes everybody and is kind of big and smiley and real sort of positive.
Golden retriever energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And can that help in the clubhouse? Absolutely. Just one thing to note in general, though, is we don't understand clubhouse dynamics and what works. And so we often sort of talk about it in the most sort of broad terms. So yeah, does this work and does he bring energy? Absolutely. Is that what that clubhouse needs? It sounds right. Is it what it actually needs? None of us know.
Yeah.
And, so it's always limited to me on what we can talk about. This is my sort of like number side. I can't sort of quantify this, but I do know, hey, it must matter, right? Because it's something teams value.
And it just seemed like, we'll get to you in a second, Andy, but it just seemed like the way the dugout reacted to his first home run, it was awesome. Listening to his interview on Peacock during the game was great. I don't know. To me, I feel reinvigorated. Andy, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No problem. It's just Brian said the word needs a couple of times, and I think that's exactly right. We don't have any idea what the team needs. And frankly, if you're on pace to only lose 59 games in the season, the needs part is really kind of air quote needs. They need to get through August without losing a bunch of ground to Seattle or losing a bunch of ground to New York. They're very close to taking over the best record in the American League American League. And that, to me, should be the goal for the rest of the season, is to beat out the Yankees, even though personally I think the second seed the better road for us. That's what they have to play for. But frankly, all these teams, with probably the exception of the Mariners, because they really haven't been here, are just trying to get through August without hurting themselves, trying to figure out what the rotations are, trying to figure out what their best lineups are. Even now, because that's one of the beauties of baseball, we've played 109 games, 110 games. We still don't know what our best lineup is. And that's true of all baseball teams. You're constantly manipulating pieces, constantly moving guys around, constantly messing with the batting order to get the optimal performance. And that's what August is about, survival and figuring all that out so you can come out, dominate September, and go into October baseball, hopefully playing your best ball. Playing your best ball in August doesn't matter a whole lot. Yeah. Just like a 14-game winning streak in July doesn't matter a whole hell of a lot at the end of the day.
Brian, he's throwing shade at our one Mariner listener. We do have a Mariner listener. You're exactly right. And heart goes out to Yankee fans and Matt Carpenter. I mean, one of the nice guys in baseball who I guess broke his foot yesterday. Out for the season. Like, it's just, you're exactly right. Your whole outlook on things can change if for real, not just I lost 5 games in a row, because it happens, but losing a guy who has arguably been a big lift to that team is not going to be easy for them to overcome. Brian, Lance McCullers had his 3rd rehab start, and it's so funny to watch the battle on Twitter where people are really worried about result, not worried about, like he talked about, I was trying to get the shape of his slider down, right? So that's pretty much, he was throwing nothing but sliders. Really what we need to be working out is pitch count and efficiency, right? Like, as long as he gets his pitch count up, we should see him before the end of August, I would think.
Yeah. He had 86 pitches, so that's up slightly from the last one, and that's close to a full load for a pitcher. Lance always gives a lot of interviews. So he was feeling great both after the game, and I guess we'll probably hear from him more today, but that's sort of the real sort of thing. This is spring training for Lance McCullers, and we should put as much focus on the results of Lance McCullers in a rehab start as we would on Lance McCullers in a March 25th game again, in West Palm Beach. And so, yeah, seems like he is on track. Maybe one more start in the minors, or maybe they're going to bring him back this weekend to face off against Oakland. To Andy's previous point, another potential sort of shot of energy to the team, just having, hey, we all kind of like Lance and he's here and we know he's pretty good at this. So, even if it takes him some time to work out the kinks, again, big lead in the division, big lead on the number 2 seed, the two things you really need to worry about. If he does some more spring training starts at Minute Maid Park or on a major league mound, that's perfectly fine for this team. The question is getting him ramped up for, middle of September into October, him pitching his best then.
Yeah, especially Andy, when, even if they do, because I know they have to make a move, I think by August 21st is when his rehab start window is over. But I mean, if you look at the Astros schedule, it was already light going in, and now it's going to be lighter because there's a lot of teams that sold at the deadline. So, it does seem like we have that flexibility with him to be able to keep working it out in Minute Maid if he's not able to do it at Constellation anymore.
Yeah, it's I'm selfishly hoping that McCullers comes back sooner rather than later, but ultimately we have to get over this, and we being Astros Twitter have to get over this idea of being Drayton McClain about spring training results. Drayton McClain very famously, when he bought the team in 1993, 92, it had to be explained to him that it doesn't matter if you win games in Florida. It doesn't. It just doesn't. And why are you taking the starters out in the third inning? We're here to win. No, that's not what this is about. And we have a whole host of Astros fans who found this team in the last 5 to 10 years, and no fault of their own, be a bandwagon fan. I don't care. But you've got to understand the game. It's about a process of winning 162 games just to get you in a good position for the playoffs. So you're playing for seeding right now. So you can go win 116 games in a regular season, and ultimately it doesn't matter when you get swept out of the playoffs. Where am I today? Seattle.
You really are. You are in Seattle and bathing in their tears. I love it.
They're so happy about their little team right now. It's just so cute. It's at the airport. They've got a little Mariners hat on a statue. It's great. But it's ultimately what McCullers, for me, selfishly, I need him to replace Luis Garcia in the rotation. I know that's
what I was getting to next. Like Luis.
That may not be what happens, but that's what I want to see, because Luis Garcia right now is a beating to watch. Would you like me to expound on that?
Yeah, no, I do want to jump into that, and I'm going to start with you first, and then we'll go to Brian because you'll have the numbers to back it up. But just the eyeball test, it does seem like maybe Luis Garcia has hit a ceiling in his development. I don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know if it's because he's pitched more, but right, Andy, like we even saw Christian Javier bounce back from 2 really just kind of mess starts that were, I mean, still quality starts, but this was, I think Luis seems to be sort of stuck in this one spot.
Yeah. And my problem, other than he works horribly slow, I know people love the little cha-cha slide thing and it's fantastic. And we have people who want to sell t-shirts about it and it's great. It's fun for the national broadcaster to talk about, but it makes the game so slow and so difficult to watch, especially when he's doing it and throwing ball after ball after ball. My big issue beyond all of that is it is very difficult with the amount of pitches he throws to ever go past the 5th inning. So if you're going to the 5th inning, you're giving up 3 runs. Your ERA is reflective of what that is. He's nearly at a 4 now. That's not a quality starter in Major League Baseball, or at least not for a contending team. I've got to think McCullers, based on his career, is going to do better than that, especially as we get deeper into his rehabilitation in the real world. But I'm worried that he hasn't, back to Garcia, hasn't made that adjustment. We talk about adjustments a lot on this show. Urquidy made an adjustment this year because there was a time a couple months ago that we could have been having the same conversation about Jose Urquidy. Garcia, for all intents and purposes, has a higher ceiling than Christian Javier and Jose Urquidy. But Garcia hasn't taken that next step on his adjustments, and the league has kind of figured out that he's not going to throw strikes. I don't have to swing a whole lot. I just have to wait for the fastball to come in.
Yeah.
And that's problematic. I would not trust him with a playoff start right now.
Brian.
Yeah, over his last 10 starts, Garcia's ERA is 4.76, mostly due to giving up 10 home runs in those 10 starts is sort of the biggest sort of thing here. His FIP's a little lower than that, but it's still right at 4. So it's, not a, not a really good number in context. He's been about a league average pitcher, slightly worse than that for, again, 10 starts now, so not a tiny sample games here. Can he come back from that? Yes. Is he one of our best starters if everyone is healthy? No. Do I trust him in a playoff game? Yeah, he can do something there. Do I trust him as much as a healthy Lance McCullers? Or I think Christian Javier is a more talented pitcher than Garcia. So I disagree with Andy there. I would like to see him with more innings in the playoffs than Luis Garcia. But again, I think they're going to go to a 6-man rotation again when McCullers comes back, and everyone will continue to get a start in that. And again, he'll have a chance to make some adjustments and try to improve as they get into September and October.
That rotation piece will be interesting because after this, we had an off day yesterday. After this next 14 game stretch, we have a lot of off days. There is at least one off day, I think, in every week, except for one in the remaining part of this regular season. So a 6-man rotation is going to be interesting to see, and keep your key pitchers start fresh and crisp. And then to back up on something, I think Christian Javier is a worse pitcher than Luis Garcia or a better pitcher than Luis Garcia. The organization going into the beginning of this year valued Luis Garcia more than they valued Christian Javier. That probably has changed over the course of this year based on performance. But the thing for Luis Garcia, I can say positively, is he is still young for the league. He is still a guy that, if everything had fallen right and we didn't have a pandemic, would be probably making his major league debut this year. Or maybe he's in his 2nd year and not his 4th year. But it's on him to make that next adjustment, or he's going to be one of thousands and thousands of baseball players that had a pretty good, 3-year run and then kind of faded off into somewhere else. I don't think it's that dire yet, but it could be.
It's going to blow I think I'll blow a gasket if Javier goes to the bullpen and Luis Garcia stays in the rotation. And I'm sure it's because they think Garcia is a bit more flexible and can do both. But I really think I really think that Javier's future is as a starter, and that's what he needs to be doing.
The step that Javier has taken this year is proving that he's definitely a starter in the long term. But the question for this team in October, right, is what's the best for October? What they weren't able to do well with Javier last year in the bullpen is make him a multi-inning weapon. They weren't able to sort of make it work out. Part is they didn't play a lot of close games last year for him.
And Dusty also forgot that was the goal.
So you're trying to teach an old manager new tricks in that case, right? Which is, breaking all. Dusty's willing to do it, but breaking old habits isn't the easiest thing for Dusty. And fair enough, he has been managing for 30 plus years. So, he's developed a way to think about these things. So I don't know what they will do. It's something they're not going to make a decision on that, or at least publicly announce it today here in early August. Nope. They may do something later on in September. But again, for right now, it's completely, it'll be 6-man rotation once McCullers comes back. And then they'll think about how to adjust that as they get into September.
Yeah, I think what I think is interesting is that the Astros do a lot of tandem starting in the minors. And I don't know, it seems like that might be an approach to take, particularly when Lance comes back. We don't know really what his stamina is going to be like. And right, Andy, why not just...
Well, you'd like to think that's the plan, because realistically, McCullers probably does struggle a little bit when he gets back, the first couple of starts. So maybe he only goes 3 innings, 4 innings. You can't destroy your bullpen for the next series waiting on Lance McCullers to get his wind back and be effective. So if you could get him 1 or 2 times through a lineup, at least initially, and then bring in somebody else to pitch 3 innings and get you to the 6th or 7th, that's a whole lot better plan. And the Astros are smart enough that they'll adjust to whatever they need to do to get there. Because again, we're in a different spot than the Cardinals who are fighting for their playoff lives. We are literally positioning ourselves for where we're going to be in the playoffs. And that's opens up a whole new world of options and freedom. They still have to win games. They still want to win games. They're not trying not to win games, but they are playing with parts right now. I think we see a different team this Rangers series than we saw the last week. That off day at home is going to make a world of difference in their energy tonight, I hope. Even facing a tough pitcher with Martin Perez. But I think you're going to see a different team at home this week than we've seen for the last couple of weeks, or at least since that Seattle series.
Yeah, it's funny because I just read a headline that annoyed me, and I want to get y'all's take on the headline before we get out of here. But it's on the Astros.com, but it wasn't written by McTaggart, and it says a forgettable series split proves Astros not untouchable. Well, I mean, let's break it down. They split a 4-game series with a team likely to make the playoffs, or at least in the playoff hunt. In one of those games, they basically ran out the B team lineup. I don't understand why we can't look at things with nuance, Brian. Like this, I don't know, that just clickbait stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and also the MLB.com, when their lead guy is on vacation, they bring in a stringer from the local town, and so that guy doesn't know the Astros as well, and so he's not going to give as subtle a take on the Astros as we find otherwise. So I'm going to ignore that sort of in general, but yeah, they're not going to go 162-0. You can still be a good baseball team without going 162-0. Hey, they lost a 1-run game, and most 1-run games turn out to be just a matter of sort of coin flip. And so, hey, had they won that game 2-1 and strung a couple hits together, bunch their hits together, we'd be feeling slightly differently, but it wouldn't say much different about sort of the quality of this team overall.
Andy?
Yeah, it's I'm not worried about anything. I think what you're seeing with that line gets into everything Brian just said, but I think there's another piece of it that's a little bit deeper. When you have a stringer or somebody from the local market that's covering the Astros for Major League Baseball, and then you have an editor writing a headline, Major League Baseball, outside of the Yankees and the Dodgers, doesn't want anybody to be perceived as a dominant team because they want every market to feel like they have a shot at making the playoffs and winning the series and all that kind of stuff. So it behooves them to write things that say, well, the Astros aren't untouchable, so keep watching our games because we've got another series coming up. And when they make the playoffs, they might lose. And you can come out and boom and throw things and cheer when Jose Altuve ends up on the ground because your team might win too. It could happen. I'm not the Aggie who thinks all media is against them. And I'm not the Astros fan who thinks all media is against them. But I do think there's a certain value of playing up deficiencies for the Astros in the current Major League Baseball world because other fan bases eat into that. They like it. And they do click those articles. Oh, they're not unbeatable. Well, I'm going to click that. I want to see how they're not unbeatable. Great. Maybe we'll win too.
Maybe we'll win too. Well, all of you guys, or both of you guys, are winners. That does wrap up Go Astros. We will be back next week on our regular day. Until then, guys, Go Astros.
I also took a rest day yesterday, like the players, and did absolutely nothing. I hope that really helped the team tonight. Go Astros.
It is very likely that I'm attending a Yankees-Mariners game on Wednesday. I'll be rooting for the Earthquake.
Go Astros is a presentation from Twitchy Dolphin Media and part of the Let's Get To Baseball Network.